so much for joining Los Cien for this important conversation this evening called Behind the Lines, Wildfires and Farm Worker Safety. Our community has found itself under the national spotlight to ensure that we keep our farm workers safe in the face of increasing fires and the pressure in the face of increasing fires, and is facing pressure cultural to save and livestock. We recognize it can be a very sensitive topic, and our goal this evening is to have a conversation on the perspectives on all sides of keeping farm workers safe during wildfires. I'm incredibly grateful to all of the panelists this evening who have chosen to join us in this conversation to present this range of perspectives. We have folks joining us from farm workers in the field to state level regulators. And we offer this conversation as the opening of a longer conversation on this complicated and challenging topic. To start us off this evening, we'll be joined by Max Alper, who is the Executive Director of North Bay Jobs with Justice, who has spent the last few months interviewing many farm workers to understand their experiences during fires. Max brings 20 years of experience organizing with low-wage immigrant workers in California. Our deepest gratitude as well to Margarita Garcia, who has courageously chosen to join us tonight to share her firsthand experience of working in the fields. Welcome, Max, y bienvenida, Margarita. Gracias por estar aquí esta noche. To help us understand the role that Cal OSHA plays in protecting and improving the health and safety of workers in California, as well as offer a regulatory and enforcement framework for keeping workers safe during fires, we are honored and excited to be joined by Senor Juan Calderon, who is District Manager for Cal OSHA Enforcement Outreach Coordination Program Unit. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. He has approximately 30 years experience in occupational safety and health, of which 20 years have been with Cal OSHA. To help us learn how these regulations get from the state level policy to on-the-ground training, education, and implementation of our thousands of farm workers, we are incredibly grateful to also be joined this evening by Professor Daniel Robledo, who is a viticulturalist consultant and has worked in California vineyards and grapevine nurseries since 1969. He taught viticulture at the Napa Valley College and Santa Rosa Junior College and crop protection products and fertilizers. Currently, he is offering viticulture consulting and ag worker safety training through his business, Robledo Ag and Safety Services. He has been working in the field for over 30 plus years. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening, Professor Robledo. We are incredibly grateful for the courage and fortitude of these speakers who are able to join us tonight and speak about what is happening behind the line and during fire season and what it's like to work in these extreme weather conditions, as well as helping us understand the systems that are working to protect and ensure the health and safety of our farm workers. We also want to reiterate that it is always our goal to have a balanced conversation and include all the voices on any topic we present at Los Cien. We had also invited the Farm Bureau, Sonoma County Wine Growers, and the Ag Commission to join and speak tonight. And while they were unable to join us this evening, we'll continue to be in dialogue about their joining for a program on this issue in the future. Our intent is to have this be the opening and beginning of an important dialogue in Sonoma County to help our community think about how the livelihood we enjoy here affects the people who help provide it. With that, I'm honored and excited to hand it over to our first speaker, Max Alper, to share a little bit about who is North Bay Jobs with Justice and what was your process for coming up with certain health and safety priorities for farm workers in Sonoma County.
Well, thank you, Carrie, and thank you, Los Cien and everyone for having us on. And just want to acknowledge first that there's been tremendous work by countless people for decades on the work of farm worker safety, and we're honored to be here and to build upon that legacy and that great work. North Bay Jobs with Justice is a growing coalition of over 30 community and labor organizations here that really believe in fighting for economic, racial, and climate justice. A little bit about how we got to this point, and then we'll turn it over to Margarita to share her own experiences. But last year during the wildfires, we heard a lot of rumors and stories about workers in evacuation zones. And so we set out to make sure that we really knew what was happening based on workers' real direct experiences. So we went out and did in-depth surveys. We set out to do 30 of these in-depth surveys with agricultural, vineyard, and farm workers, but there was actually so much interest that we did 100 of these surveys. And through those surveys, we found that the real concerns, the top 5 concerns for farm workers in wildfires were language justice, disaster insurance, community safety observers, hazard pay, and clean bathrooms and water. And before I turn it over to Margarita, I just want to share a story of last week during the red flag warning, during the lightning. We were called by farm workers who were out there picking, out there harvesting. And we went out there because workers felt that they were in a dangerous situation. It was wet, there was lightning, and we went out there to make sure that workers were safe. And, you know, part of what we found was that there was mayordomos who were yelling at people and threatening them, you know, and when we asked the manager how much that they were paying people, it was $170 per ton. The average price of selling a ton of grapes in Sonoma County is over $2,700, right? And that 1 ton makes over 700 bottles. I looked up how much those bottles were selling for. They were selling for $125 each. We think that we all have a responsibility here in our community to make sure that the people who do the work, the people who are tending to these plants, tending to these vines, harvesting, that they be respected and they are able to live good lives. And so what we're asking more than any of these priorities is we're asking you to listen to the workers. And the workers are incredible people who have been doing this work, you know, and have incredible knowledge and skill and experience. And for many people, there's also ancestral knowledge of relationship with nature and taking care of plants and responding in these kind of crises. And so it's an honor to welcome Margarita Garcia, who's one of our leaders on our farm worker organizing team, to share her experiences. Thank you very much for having us.
Buenas tardes o buenas noches a todos. Tan en Irontacano, si bien bien Margarita García, ña añun sabi kuni, hiña nu ña México kuni. Muy buenas noches. Mi nombre es Margarita García. Soy de la comunidad mixteca. Mi lengua materna es el mixteco. Y gracias por la invitación el día de hoy. Me gustaría compartir un poquito sobre los 5 puntos o las demandas que estamos trabajando junto con Job with Justice. Y sí, la primera se trata de justicia lingüística. Como vieron, hablo mi idioma, y en los campos hay demasiadas personas que hablan diferentes tipos de lenguas, variantes de mixteco, triqui, chatino, mije, maya. Entonces, con todas estas situaciones difíciles en que nos encontramos, a veces no encontramos la traducción. Y aunque estemos y tenemos conocimiento de lo que está pasando, yo no puedo ayudar a otra comunidad, por ejemplo, a la comunidad triqui, porque yo no hablo triqui. Mi idioma es mixteco. Entonces, me uní a este grupo porque creo que este grupo está haciendo un trabajo bueno y justo para mi comunidad. No nada más mi comunidad indígena, sino mi comunidad mixteca o mi comunidad campesina. El segundo punto es lo que estamos tocando sobre el seguro de desastre. Hemos sufrido bastante en estos últimos años, como saben, con los incendios. En 2017, muchos de los campesinos fueron afectados con este incendio, se quemaron sus casas y yo fui una de esas. En el 2017 nos quedamos sin nada, yo estaba trabajando de noche y solo estaba mi esposo con mis 2 hijas. Y básicamente no pudo sacar nada porque ella prefirió salvarle la vida a los niños, las niñas, porque el incendio ya estaba alrededor del apartamento. No hubo opción. El tercer punto es acerca de los observadores. Algo que me ha gustado mucho de esto, y yo me incluyo como observadora, porque yo cada año trabajo en la pizca, cada año trabajo lo que es las tardeadas, quitando hojas, porque me gusta saber qué está pasando en el campo. Me agrada saber qué es lo que está pasando en mi comunidad. Me gusta saber cuál es la necesidad y qué es lo que le hace falta a mi comunidad para así poder apoyarlos cuando participamos en la comunidad. El otro punto es el pago extra del peligro, el por qué a veces te estamos pidiendo esto pago extra del peligro. Nos ha pasado con el humo. A veces el humo nos daña bastante cuando estamos piscando uva, porque realmente yo siempre he puesto ese ejemplo, nos dan supuestamente máscara de N95, pero siempre he dado ese ejemplo. Me encantaría ver a varios grupos corriendo 5 veces subiendo y bajando en Taylor Mountain con esa máscara. Porque cuando trabajamos piscando uvas estamos en un nivel, estamos trabajando por toneladas, por contrato, que realmente es de adrenalina, es de carrera, es de rápido. Y es como ir en un maratón de 10K y ponte la máscara N95, a ver si puedes respirar. A veces es imposible. Entonces, básicamente, a veces las máscaras no nos sirven. Agradecemos que nos los dan, pero a veces no nos funciona porque nos asfixiamos. A veces, entonces necesitamos a veces tener ese tiempo, descansar ese tiempo para estar con nuestras familias, por nuestra seguridad y por la seguridad de nuestras familias. Pasó un caso de una mujer que estaba embarazada y así tuvo que estar trabajando junto al humo. Al final su embarazo fue de alto riesgo. ¿Quién lo ayudó? Nadie. Nadie supo de su historia, nunca pasó nada y así quedó. Y es triste ver a otras mujeres, es triste ver a otra campesina, otra comunidad indígena, de no poder ayudarlos. El otro punto también es sobre lo que es el baño y agua limpia. Estamos exigiendo eso como mujeres. A veces tenemos que usar el baño sucio, lleno de lodo, lleno de cenizas, mojado, porque no tenemos dónde ir. Como mujer tenemos que usar el baño, no tenemos dónde ir, no tenemos esa oportunidad de decir con permiso, puedo ir al baño a un lado o hay otro baño, no hay opción. Necesitamos los baños limpios, así como las aguas limpias. Si hace un calor, necesitamos que haya agua extra si se acaba, porque tenemos que consumir agua. No somos 10 ni 15 personas, a veces que trabajamos hasta 50, 60 personas en un solo rancho. Son diferentes cuadrillas en la cual necesitamos que el agua esté limpia, esté a su temperatura correcta, porque luego nos daña también nuestra salud. Y no podemos enfermarnos cuando estamos trabajando por contrato. Tenemos que estar presente, porque si falla una o dos personas, ya no puede, la cuadrilla ya no puede trabajar. Tiene que estar ahí. Entonces, muchas veces como trabajadora, o yo como trabajadora campesina, yo trabajo, estudio, soy madre. No nada más me dedico a trabajar, también participo en la comunidad. Soy líder de comunidades indígenas, así como comunidades campesinas. A veces tenemos que entrar a la 1, 2 de la mañana, 3 de la mañana, 10 de la noche. Sin embargo, a veces yo llego 10 minutos, a veces hasta 1 hora antes del trabajo. ¿Y por qué llego 1 hora antes del trabajo? Porque a nosotros, yo en lo principal, yo nací en un núcleo campesino. He vivido en mi comunidad. Hemos amado lo que es la tierra, lo que es la cosecha. Y es por eso nos gusta trabajar a veces al campo. A mí me encanta porque me gusta tener esa conexión, amar y respetar la tierra, amar y respetar la cosecha que se nos da. Y si estamos ahí día con día trabajando, aguantando cualquier clima, cualquier cambio climático, ya sea el sol, el calor, el frío, en las noches que se nos cae el frío, estamos para sacar las cosechas, para poder beber un gran vino. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Margarita.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I would just ask that I think that I'm not going to be able to interpret the whole thing right there. I think we would need Margarita to share again if there's time for that, because that's a lot there. I'm happy to do the sort of quick version of that, but I want to really respect Margarita's words. So Carrie, I'm not sure how you want to proceed with that.
I value Margarita's words first and foremost. So if Margarita, si está bien diciendo esto otra vez, lo siento, pero muchísimas gracias. Es muy importante que todos puedan oír y pienso que mejor hacerlo de nuevo para que todos puedan oír. Read it so we can hear.
So tal vez, Margarita, lo que podemos hacer, porque ellos tenían un error con la interpretación, si tal vez usted puede decir un poco y yo voy a interpretar y usted diga otro y yo voy a interpretar, si sea posible hacerlo otra vez. ¿Está bien, Margarita?
Sí, está bien.
Okay, and I think antes que empezamos, I think this is actually just a good example. Creo que es un buen ejemplo de por qué la tema de justicia lingüística es tan importante. And I think it's just a good example of why language justice is so important. And I would just ask everyone to imagine if you were going into an evacuation zone or near a fire or with a lot of smoke, and you were not able to have the kind of interpretation that is needed to make sure you are safe. And so solamente para pensar en qué es la situación, si está entrando a una zona de evacuación, si con el humo, con el calor, cerca de los incendios, y no podía tener la interpretación a su propio idioma, va a estar más difícil.
Y solamente para mencionarles que la función de interpretación ya está funcionando. Por favor, seleccionen su canal de interpretación. Y Betsy estará brincando de un canal a otro. Gracias.
Ok, so entonces Margarita va a hablar otra vez y yo no voy a interpretar, Betsy va a interpretar. Ok. Margarita, gracias por sus palabras, por su fuerza. I just want to say thank you to Margarita for your leadership and your strength. And also thank you for sharing your indigenous language Mixteco with us. Y gracias por compartir su idioma Mixteco con nosotros. It's an honor. These are languages that are passed down for generations.
Muchas
Okay.
gracias, Max.
Gracias, Margarita. Adelante, compañera.
Ok, pues nuevamente, mi nombre es Margarita García. Y voy a trocar lo que son los 5 puntos de la demanda sobre la justicia lingüística, el por qué a veces estamos exigiendo lo que es la justicia lingüística. Como saben, mi lengua materna es el mixteco alto, pero en los campos hay diferentes tipos de lenguas indígenas, así como maya, chatino, mije, triqui. Entonces necesitamos que toda la información que se llegue a los campos se traduzca a nuestra lengua. Muchas veces yo puedo estar ahí, pero yo no puedo ayudar a mi comunidad porque mi idioma es diferente a traducir a una comunidad triqui, a una comunidad chatina. So necesitamos que siempre haya alguien que nos traduzca cada información que se nos da. Y el segundo tema, el punto que se toca es el seguro del desastre. Como mencioné, el 2017, el primer incendio que tuvimos que enfrentar en nuestro condado nos afectó bastante a la comunidad indígena, a la comunidad campesina. Y uno de esos ejemplos fue mi ejemplo de que se me quemó el apartamento. Yo estaba trabajando en la noche y no había nadie en casa, solo mi esposo y mis hijas. Él tuvo que sacar mis hijas y no pudo sacar absolutamente nada, no sacó ninguna cosa que nos pertenecía, porque solo pensó en salvar la vida de las niñas, porque el incendio ya estaba alrededor del apartamento. Y el tercer punto es acerca de los observadores. Hay observadores, yo me incluyo como observadora también, cada año pisco en la uva en las tardeadas. Y la razón es para saber qué es lo que está pasando en el campo. Es para ver qué apoyo recibe la comunidad indígena y mi comunidad campesina. Y me gusta y me agrada mucho la idea con el trabajo de justicia que tienen estas personas vigilando lo que está pasando con nosotros y que si tenemos que dejar de trabajar o nos tienen que apoyar de una u otra manera, ellos están con nosotros siempre. El otro es el pago extra de peligro. La razón que se está pidiendo a veces este punto, y me encanta este punto, porque nos ha afectado mucho lo que es el humo. A toda nuestra comunidad hemos sufrido de este humo, así como irritación de la garganta, ojos, nariz. Y aunque nos proveen máscaras, a veces las máscaras de N95 no nos sirve. Le agradecemos porque piensan en nosotros y nos dan esa máscara, pero en realidad es como subir 5 veces, y siempre lo pongo este ejemplo, subir 5 veces en la montaña Taylor, subiendo, bajando, corriendo con esta máscara puesta. Porque nosotros los campesinos estamos trabajando por tonelada, por contrato, que tenemos que trabajar corriendo, casi corriendo para recoger la uva. No estamos por hora, estamos por contrato, donde es de adrenalina. Y si tenemos que trabajar fuerte, lo tenemos que hacer, porque tenemos que sacar las uvas. No piscamos, hubo una noche que tan solo una cuadrilla piscamos 32 toneladas en una sola noche, en 12 horas. Imagínense con máscara N95. También el otro hoy puse un ejemplo del año pasado donde estuvo una persona trabajando y estaba embarazada. Esta señora terminó afectando su vida, su salud, porque su embarazo se convirtió en alto riesgo por estar trabajando en esta condición. Nadie supo y nadie la apoyó, y no sabemos dónde quedó la historia de la señora. Porque nadie quiere escuchar lo que está pasando en nuestra comunidad, más cuando hablan un idioma y no se le escucha, no se le entiende y no se les hace caso. También exigimos lo que es el baño y agua limpia. Somos mujeres, somos bastante mujeres, estamos trabajando entre hombres. Entonces no podemos a veces usar el mismo baño que los hombres. Los baños están sucios, ahorita que estamos piscando, están sucios, están llenos de lodo, están llenos de agua. Aparte, si cae el incendio, están llenos de ceniza. Uno como mujer tenemos que cuidar nuestra salud. Sin embargo, a veces los patrones no quieren cuidar nuestra salud. ¿Y quién nos lo va a cuidar? Lo que me gustaría agregar al último, el por qué me gusta a veces llegar temprano a mi trabajo. A veces estoy hasta 1 hora antes en el trabajo. Es porque me encanta sentir lo que es la naturaleza. Nosotros nos enseñaron a amar y querer la tierra. Yo nací en un núcleo de campesinos, de comunidad indígena, en donde se nos enseña a amar y querer lo que es la tierra. Así tener el respeto hacia las cosechas. Y es tan bonito empezar el día con una energía tan positiva, con una energía limpia para poder cortar las uvas. Y de esta manera puede haber un gran vino para que puedan tomar un gran vino. Pero detrás de esa botella de vino hay sacrificios. Y no nada más estos 5 puntos también. Hay aún más tipo de abusos para nuestra comunidad y para nuestros campesinos. Ojalá y algún día puedan dar un sueldo justo. Lo que a mí me encantaría en lo personal es que se le diera un retiro justo a estos campesinos. No nada más un retiro justo, sino también tuvieran un seguro médico. La razón porque muchos se han lastimado. Hay personas adultas que se han lastimado. No nada más yo me dedico en el campo, yo también soy estudiante, yo estoy tomando clases en el colegio. Soy madre, soy esposa y soy voluntaria en la comunidad. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Margarita. We are honored to have your voice. Gracias para compartir su cuenta otra vez y para su paciencia esta noche. Thank you so much for sharing your story again and for your patience with us this evening. It's an honor to have your voice here and your stories, and thank you for your courage. So we're going to transition into understanding the systems that are in place or need to be improved to improve the safety and health for farm workers, such as Margarita Garcia. It's really important after hearing her story that we understand what systems are in place to protect her and her coworkers and their families, especially when they're working behind the lines during fires and extreme weather events. So our next speaker will help us start to get a sense of this system of regulations and enforcements meant to protect the health and safety of farm workers behind the line, and understand what's in place, what's the capacity, and what are challenges to implementation. So we are honored to be joined by Mr. Juan Calderon, District Manager of Cal OSHA Enforcement Outreach Coordination Program Unit. Thank you so much, Mr. Calderon, for joining us this evening to help us understand the complex network of state regulations that are in place to help ensure health and safety of our farm workers and what else might be needed.
Thank you. If I can be given permission to share the screen, I'll open up the PowerPoint.
Fantastic. We can see your screen now. And for all of our participants, you can enjoy these slides on our website at loscien.org after the show.
Okay, fine then. I'll move the slides personally. Okay, fine. Well, thank you very much, Los Cien, for having the Division of Occupational Safety and Health here this evening to participate in this dialogue regarding exposure to wildfire smoke. Now, wildfire smoke it affects our total population of California. And so when we're going to be speaking today about the impact of wildfire smoke on the workers working outdoors. So we're going to be talking about the regulation that requires an employer to comply and protect the worker against the exposure of wildfire smoke. Okay. So again, when we look at the state regulations, well, the first thing is you need to understand that in accordance with the Federal Occupational Health and Safety Act of 1970, that was signed into law on December 29, 1969 by Richard Nixon, the President of the United States, and which then became law in April of 1971. And in California in 1973, the Department of Industrial Relations and the federal government reached a memorandum of understanding in where California was given the authority to regulate safety and health for California workers. The California Labor Code, Section 6400, states that every employer shall provide a safe and healthful work environment to its employees. So we're going to start today basically talking about the two main regulations that address wildfire smoke as a health hazard to California workers. Well, the first regulation is contained in the General Industry Safety Orders, is known as the Injury and Illness Prevention Program, and that is Section 3203. And the Injury and Illness Prevention Program basically requires every employer to have a written program in which they declare that they shall have a safe and healthful work environment by doing the following. Well, they have to have a written program that establishes procedures where both management and workers have to adhere to have a safe and healthful work environment. And it needs to have responsibility, and that basically is top management to administer the program at the work site. Okay, so it needs to be a person of responsibility and authority, because sometimes we have to do investments for the purchasing of personal protective equipment that in fact may have a bottom dollar impact on the company. So the responsibility towards the expenditures to meet the needs of providing a safe and healthful work environment have to be met at that top level of management. It requires compliance. That means that the employer is going to develop rules of behavior for the workers and for management to adhere to ensure that there is a safe and healthful work environment. One of the most important things that every employer in the state of California should know is that the California Occupational Safety and Health Appeals Board actually has a list of affirmative defenses that employers can use. And one of them happens to be known as the Independent Employee Act. Well, the first thing is that for you to meet the Independent Employee Act defense, you need to have a written injury prevention program. It needs to be implemented and it needs to be effective. And it does not apply to management. It only applies when the person that commits the act that results in a violation is a worker. And that the worker had knowledge that the act that he committed that resulted in a violation of the safety orders, he knew what he was doing was incorrect or in non-compliance with the employer's policies and procedures. You need to have communication. Well, Maria explained that language is an issue. Well, when we look at providing training, communication to our workers, we need to ensure that we utilize those employees in our employment that speak both languages fluently and that we can utilize them to provide the training communication to our workers. Okay. One of the comments that she made was, well, how do we communicate when we have to evacuate or do other actions relating to safety? Well, this is where the employer at that work site has to identify those employees that do speak those languages, which are indigenous towards the workers, and provide him the knowledge to how to communicate to his fellow workers, which are non-English speaking or non-Spanish speaking. So there is effective communication. So it's very important. Also in the communication, we're talking about communicating our safety program. How? Safety trainings, toolbox meetings, maybe some type of safety communications with their payroll, etc. Hazard assessments. I need to look at my workplace and identify those conditions that may result in a workplace injury or an illness due to an exposure to unsafe conditions. Well, when we look at the wildfire smoke, well, we need to have an understanding of what the hazard is relating to wildfire smoke, and we'll be talking briefly about it shortly. So again, you need to have the hazard assessment. You need to understand the information being provided to you via the air quality management districts of your local community, whether it be the California Air Resources Board, the Bay Area Air Quality, or the local air quality management district in your region. So it's very important because they're going to be addressing the level of airborne 2.5 micron particulate matter that's in the air. And so we'll be talking about the air quality indices shortly as we go into the standards. So again, hazard assessments. You need to investigate your accidents and exposure incidents. Answer the who, what, where, and whys. You need to take hazard corrections. You need to provide training to your employees in the language that they understand. Okay. And again, you need to provide your employees access to your written injury and illness prevention program. That is the IIPP. Every employer in the state of California is required to have a written injury and illness prevention program since July 1, 1991. So there is no reason for you, if you're an employer, not to be doing business without an injury and illness prevention program. And as you can see by the title on this slide here, it says Model Injury and Illness Prevention Program. You do not have to pay a consultant to put together an injury and illness prevention program. We, the division, have available for you on our website a model injury prevention program that you can utilize to develop your injury prevention program. Now, the second regulation that applies to wildfire smoke in 2019.
Mr. Calderon, just a quick time check. We'll have to have a couple more minutes and then we'll have to transition to our next speaker.
Okay, I will speak quickly then. I apologize. Okay.
Para que todos puedan escuchar y hablar.
Okay. All right. The primary regulation is 5141.1, protection from wildfire smoke. Again, there was a temporary standard in 2019. Now it is a permanent standard. This applies to work being performed outdoors. Very important. You, the employer, and you, the worker, you need to be knowledgeable of what is the air quality indices for 2.5 particulate matter that's in the air. If the local air quality districts state that the concentration is 151 or more particles in our air, then you need to be aware that at that concentration, our air quality is not helpful for those persons that have respiratory conditions or other medical conditions that may be affected by the poor air quality. The standard states that the employer will provide the worker at that concentration of particulate a N95 respirator for voluntary use. Very important, voluntary use. Okay, so it is now the worker that needs to determine, well, do I want to breathe in this harmful particulate, or do I want to protect myself by utilizing the respirator that my employer has given to me to use voluntarily? Very important that I know that, okay? So one of the things that every employer needs to do is understand the regulation, and this is available on the internet for you to read it, okay? Very important, okay? Again, we have a great body of documentation available for you on the internet, both in English and in Spanish, relating to work being done outdoors in wildfire areas. Very important, okay? So all they're available for you in English and in Spanish, okay? All California employers that have workers doing work outside, and when the air quality index is 151 or greater, need to comply with the standard. When the concentration of the air quality indices exceeds 500, the employer must comply with the respiratory protection standard, section 5144, and they need to comply with full respiratory protection for workers. Very important for you to know, okay? So again, as I stated, the information is available both in English and in Spanish for you to do this. There is one exception to the wildfire smoke, and that is when the work is 1 hour in a work shift or less, okay? Very important. So again, as I stated, the standard applies to all outdoor work being performed. Okay. Very important. The employer is required to give the worker an appendices contained in the standard that relates to, again, for the worker understanding the use of the respirator and the hazards associated with wildfire smoke. Very important, okay? Again, other hazards that the employer needs to look at during this periods of wildfire smoke are basically heat exposure and night work being performed. Again, the concentration of smoke does not change just because the sun has set. So it's very important that we be knowledgeable that the hazard of exposure to the wildfire smoke exists during the nighttime hours also. Okay. Again, another issue that was brought up was sanitation. Again, that is every employer is required to provide 1 portalette for every 20 employees. You do have to have portalettes for women and for men, okay, based on a population of 1 to 20. Okay, Again, we do have a regulation that addresses work at night. You have to provide your workers at night adequate illumination. And again, the wildfire smokes also affect the visibility at night, okay? This law went into effect July the 1st, 2020, okay? Very important, okay? Again, the section is 3441 for equipment that's being operated in the fields in night for your reference, okay? So we have a lot of resources available for you on the internet. All you have to do is Google protecting outdoor workers exposed to wildfire smoke, and it'll take you to our great library of literature is the one that I demonstrated for you on the PowerPoint presentation. And this PowerPoint presentation is available through Los Cien, and you may obtain a free copy of it by contacting them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Calderon. Muchísimas gracias for a wealth of information. We are getting a lot of questions, so we'll move right to our next speaker, so we have time for everyone. It's an honor to have Professor Daniel Robledo, viticulturist consultant, come in to now share how are all these regulations getting implemented on the ground. So there's a lot of rules in place, but how are they implemented, and who's deciding when and where a farm worker can go to work when there's an active fire?
Thank you, Kerry. I remember attending class for ag safety from Juan Calderon, and it was an honor meeting him. He was such a good instructor. I learned a lot of things from him. I'm trying to share my screen. For some reason, it's not.
I've got it for you.
Oh, you got. Thank you very much. I don't know if I can change the screens from. I mean the slides from here, but if you don't mind helping me,
I'll change it for you.
Yes. Well, what I'm going to do is to speak about wildfire smoke safety training for ag workers from an independent ag safety trainer. I'm a viticulturist by profession. I got a minor in agricultural mechanics from Fresno State University, both of them. Yeah, I had plenty of experience working in vineyards since I started working in vineyards when I was 15 and a half years of age in 1969. My father was my first teacher. So he taught me to work with a shovel and work in grapevine nurseries and pick grapes and prune vines and work in the nursery, all the things that are down there. And, you know, I did a lot of things. I also harvested pears. So I learned to use the ladder, which is not easy at the beginning. But if you don't mind changing to the next slide. So the topic is about wildfires and the risks. And I'm going to be speaking about that from the trainer's perspective. Most of us have seen those wildfires. Next one. The wildfire impacts bring hazards to our workers. The damage or destruction of properties and vineyards, evacuations, and with that, you know, all the economy stops. So all the jobs, and it's horrible. Many people have been through that. Smoke contaminates wine grapes and wineries, and the wineries often reject them because of significant economic losses to everyone. And growers are not exempt. If you cannot sell your grapes because of smoke contamination, you are not going to have income. Next one, please. The hazards are many. For instance, the one that we more often see is the smoke hanging in the air, and we know it can get in your lungs. This picture I took in 2017. I was the safety coordinator for a labor management company, FLC, so after the fires went through there, and I saw this lady during the break, and it really hit my heart. You can see the smoke around her nostrils, her mouth, her face, all the safety she had to protect her airways was those bandanas. double bandanas, if you notice, triple. But at the time, there were no regulations for wildfire smoke protection. It was something new. I mean, we had never seen this. At least I had seen many wildfires, but not as bad. Next one, please. We also know that ashes contaminates grapes and the canopy, the leaves and branches, and they get on the workers' hands. Those ashes on the hand of that person is my hand. I was taking some grape samples in a vineyard, and look what happened just in a couple of hours of work. And I was wearing my mask, by the way. Look at that bag with crushed grapes. Those are grapes that I collected in that vineyard, and they were completely black from the ashes. That grower was not able to sell his grapes. He sold, he lost almost $2 million. So all his income was gone for that year. Next one, please. OSHA, and I'm not going to repeat all these. Mr. Calderon was, he did a very well job describing what it is, but the regulation 5141.1 to protect employees exposed to wildfires, the regulation requires the following. Well, number one, identification of harmful exposure. In this case, it's the smoke and the particles and contaminants, right? Ashes. Not to say the possibility of fires raging through a vineyard where workers may get trapped. And it has happened. Thank goodness nobody has died from that so far. No field workers as far as I know. Communication between the company and the supervisors and the crew leaders and the workers. And then the training and instruction, control of harmful exposures. Now we know through providing the N95 or P100 masks, but they are not masks, they are respirators. They are serious breathing devices. Some of them require a medical evaluation before you can wear one. Next one. So from the ag safety trainer's perspective, because I have been a vineyard worker, a vineyard foreman, in managing up to almost 600 acres of vineyards in Napa. And then for grapevine nurseries, over 900 acres, and checking vineyards and this and that. I check vineyards all over. I mean, over 2,000 acres every week in 5 or 6 different counties. So I saw a lot of things. I talked to a lot of people. So the employers I know, once I started getting involved with safety, they have a multitude of safety regulations. And I have so much empathy with them because they not only need to train their workers for this wildfire smoke hazards, but also the worker protection standard, pesticide protection, and the heat illness, communication and emergency response, and they need to line up their emergency services in hospitals and doctors and so forth. Pesticide handlers is very ample. The tractors, tractor operators, ATVs, forklift drivers, harassment prevention, and more. I mean, pruning, it's so much work. One guy told me, this guy told me he was being paid $110,000 a year for being the ag safety officer in his company, vineyard management company. That was pretty good money when he told me. I told him, I'm in the wrong career. Employers must train their supervisors and workers, but the workers have responsibilities too. The employers must document every training. They need to update their IPP or injury and illness prevention program, and then the safety trainings are valid only in that company. It is unfair for a company to get some workers or to train one workers and then they leave and they go to another company. That company needs to train them again. Next one. So from the trainer's perspective, when I'm called, some growers decide to train their workers on their own. But others, they say, you know what, I like to get a little help. And that's when they call me or they call other very experienced ag safety trainers. And then I try to work with them. So my trainings need to meet the requirements from OSHA, DPR, and so forth, the Department of Pesticide Regulations, not only OSHA. And then for the sexual harassment training, EOC and the California rules and regulations and so forth. Then I talk to the growers and I want to make sure I communicate any additional safety trainings and protocols they may have for in the company. So I become a communicator, a translator, and simplifying the complex safety regulations. Mr. Calderon was very technical, and you probably noticed he's bringing in section numbers and this and that, and it's wonderful. But for the field worker, that doesn't mean much. They get lost. So I need to simplify what it means. I'm a motivator because I like to encourage the employees to follow safety rules and regulations and respect the company's safety policies. And then I also, when I give trainings, I prefer to have the manager or the crew leaders and supervisors present because that way everybody's in the same page. I have been in situations where only the field workers are there, and then the managers and supervisors, they are doing other things, and then they don't know what we talked about. So it creates a communication discrepancy. Next one.
And we do just have a couple minutes.
Yes, yeah, I'm almost done.
You're doing fantastic. You're covering a lot. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm a former college teacher and I tend to talk too much. Next slide. So I encourage the group participation. I need to be a good listener. I want the workers to express their concerns and even complaints about safety issues. Many of them have good solutions, but others are, to be honest with you, I call them, what would be the right word to say? I don't want to insult anybody, but they become more of a nuisance. Some workers, they come with these ideas that don't make any sense or thoughts, and I say, what's going on there? But the ultimate idea is that the workers are going to be working alone many times. Nobody is going to be there around them to support them in the safety or in case of an emergency. So we want to empower them. We want to give them the list of the hospitals, the numbers to call, and this and that. So because I have all these years of hands-on practical experience, I have found out that workers, they correlate with me and they connect with me very fast. Next one. Next slide. Thank you. There's new information tools available. Now, if you want to see what's going on, DC OSHA issued those posters, beautiful posters, on how to wear your N95 respirators properly. There's websites where they tell you where the wildfires are, and then also the particles, and then the telephone, the iPhone weather update there. I took a snapshot yesterday from Fresno, and guess what? It was pretty high, but guess what? It was yesterday where the wildfires are in the Sierras. Look at, I don't know if you can see, there is 465, the air quality. Next one. So you have the information available to you. And I could talk about all these things for hours, but that's all I wanted to mention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Robledo. That was a fantastic amount of information that you packed in.
I'd like to add one thing.
Oh, yeah.
Once I give the trainings for my customers, everything else falls on the employer. I don't have any control on that because I'm not there. I'm not the manager. I'm not the supervisor. So I just try to comply with communicating the rules and regulations and the safety standards and this and that. They have to be safe. And after that, it's up to the employer. And many of I have seen problems. I was let go from a company, a labor management company in Napa, not too long ago, because there were complaints that I was too strict on the safety trainings. Some of their customers said, Daniel, it takes too long. Well, they wanted me to give a safety training in 10 minutes when the law requires 1 hour. And I said, you know what? Good. And there was a tractor accident that I never reported, but the manager refused to call emergency they didn't send the tractor driver to the hospital or medical attention. Thank goodness it was nothing too serious. But I mean, I have seen so many things, but on the other hand, I have customers who get out of their way to help their customers. Wonderful. One of my customers, when there's a smoke, he tells the workers, I'm going to pay you by the hour, $30 an hour. This year, he's paying $30 an hour if there's a smoke.
We are at the end of our program. We want to thank everybody so much for joining for this really important conversation that is just the beginning of a longer community conversation. It's clear that it's really important and there's more that needs to be done to protect the health and safety of our farm workers working behind the lines during fires. We encourage you to learn more. Check out the presenter slides on the loscien.org website following the show, and also to follow North Bay Jobs with Justice and their campaign and the priorities that Margarita mentioned that are really vital for folks like her who are in the field and need these health and safety provisions to ensure that they can do the job that they love. Thank you so much for joining us.